Okay, Masters of Horror's Imprint. I'm really not familiar with. I think his name is Takashi Miike. I'm really not familiar with a lot of his work. I know he did like Audition and Ichi the Killer, which I've yet to see. That are normally on people's like top 10 most gruesome and horrifying films. So I figured, I give Masters of Horror Imprint a shot. It's like the 19th century, so you have a journalist who's an American who's trying to find this prostitute that he loved in Japan. Right off the get-go, they're rowing a boat, and there's some guy asking about if the guy's well endowed, like he's heard all Englishmen are. And then they bump into a dead body, and he's like, oh, ugly one, with child. So then they kind of like push this bloated woman's body, and she's pregnant and naked, down the river. So the back of her head's been busted open. So he finally gets there. He finally gets, he's trying to find where she's at. It's nighttime, so he goes in. He gets a room at a local brothel. And this woman starts talking to him. Now her face is kind of, slightly deformed. Not like Jennifer deformed, but slightly deformed. And she begins to tell her about, some of her life story. The first time she tells it, it's a lie. And then she begins to tell what happened to Kimono, the woman he's trying to find. First, she's like, she hung herself. So no, you lie. So then she begins to tell her like the actual story. We're now like 20 minutes into the movie. So the first 20 minutes is kind of, you're like, okay, nice scenery. Acting is okay. It's kind of dragging. Then he goes back. Then she goes back to like, oh, this is how I met her. I was here. And then you're kind of like, oh, okay. She was the person who was nice to me. And then one day a ring ends up missing. And they're like, alright, this ring's missing. Okay. Someone's like, we think Kimono took it. This is when this movie takes a turn. They then begin to torture her. Now, the house play is fairly adamant. Don't leave any real marks, and don't go to the face. So instead, they burn her in the armpits with like heated bamboo shoots. They put acupuncture needles in between her fingers and her fingernails, not to break the fingernail off, but just to cause absolute intense amount of pain. They also kind of like hog tie her and kind of like hang her in the air while they're burning her, and they burn her like in the armpits, so spots you really won't see very often. And they stick a bunch of needles into her mouth at deep, sharp angles so she can't close her mouth, while they're kind of beating and torturing her to try to find out where this ring's at. That scene goes on for like 5 minutes. So it's 5 minutes of like intense. The woman doing the torture is like smiling and grinning, like teasing her, like, I'm gonna put this one in your eye. No, I'm not gonna stick it into your mouth. It is kind of on the, up to this point in time, it's been kind of slow. And then all of a sudden it's just, here's some violent, intense torture for 5 minutes. And it's like, okay. Okay, this is... And I'm like, okay, yeah, I get the point. Okay, I get the point. Your point has been perfectly driven home. You can stop now. Click forward a minute, my Netflix. Cheesy pizza's still going on. Okay, I get it. Yeah, she took a ring. Everyone hated her. Everyone was jealous because she looked really pretty. So they maliciously torture her. Yes, I get it. And then one day she broke and she hung herself. Then we find out some of that story is a lie. Now I'm going to get into some of the real deep spoiler parts. The deformed lady of the evening tells her background story. About how, her parents were like drifters. And her mother was a midwife. That story's a lie. If you don't mean to ruin large portions of it, you can kind of stop now. Just know that most of what she says is a lie. And once you get past the torture, the last like 15 minutes when they actually go through a lot more of the meat of the story. Having said the word meat, I realize that's probably a horrible thing to say once I get towards some of the ending parts. The deformed woman's parents were brother and sister. People found out, so they kind of had, to live in the middle of nowhere. Her mother was not the midwife. She's the abortionist. So they do show her doing what I guess at that point in time was the old way of doing abortion. Takes some sort of rooted vegetables and then pulls out a child, or part of a child. Throws into a bucket and therefore kind of has, her deformed daughter essentially dump it into the river. You're probably thinking, wow, can it get any worse? Actually, yes, it can. The deformed woman has, her twin is attached to her. And essentially her twin is a hand and a mouth attached here in the side of her head that occasionally comes out to kind of tell people secrets as well as kind of mentally destroy them. The hand was the one that really, really wanted the ring. So the hand wanted the ring, which led to Kimono being, beaten and tortured. But the sister, the non-hand, so think Vampire Hunter D when you're thinking, hand, decided to strangle Kimono. It was the first thing she ever did intentionally. As you hear about her life story, she was like beaten and raped by like everybody she knew. So you have rape, incest, abortion, severe torture. And at the very end, the guy finally snaps and he shoots her. Here's where it gets more weird. He shoots the woman who he thinks is the twins with the parasitic hand attached to her. She then turns into Kimono, the woman he's been trying to find this whole time. He then goes to prison. The prison guards tell him he's going to have a slow, torturous life. They then throw in a bucket of water. He goes to scoop out some of the water. It's bloody. He looks inside the bucket they gave him for water. And it's full of abortion remains. I can't say this movie was good. I've seen another movie where that was a Japanese horror movie that dealt with abortion, that did it in a beautifully artful way. This one almost seemed like it was cruelty for the sake of cruelty to make you go, hey, you know what? I'll pick like a couple of things that are just really taboo. I'm just going to push them to the limit, okay? But I'm not going to do it realistically. It's going to be just a super over the top. You're like, yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah, I get it. Yes, okay, I get it. And it's based on a book. Who writes a book like this? Seriously, I mean, this was, I'm watching like, alright, I'm thinking nice atmosphere, it's got a nice creepy setting to it. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, so they're beating her. I'm like, alright, fine, I'm thinking, they beat her, and that's what led to her killing herself. And this guy's gonna be haunted by not coming back soon enough to save her. Okay, nice psychological thriller works. Then he could be mentally disturbed and have the images, that. And then it makes that turn for just like raw, sheer brutality. So if you want some brutality, this is pretty good for you. If you want to see a movie that's really well thought out and executed flawlessly, not so much. This is kind of dull, and then it just goes kind of gruesome for the sake of being gruesome and pushing boundaries and taboo limits.